Hey guys, welcome back to another relationship story. In this video, my toxic in-laws stole my identity to take out a hefty loan and purchase a home illegally. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled, The Paraprofessional's Stand. So I used to work as a paraprofessional at Lincoln High School. Over time, I got to know my students really well. They always looked forward to having me in their classrooms, which felt great. It showed that I was doing a good job supporting them, and then one day the school was dealing with a huge staffing shortage. The higher-ups were scrambling to cover classes themselves, but as a paraprofessional, I was not allowed to supervise students alone in a classroom. If I showed up and no teacher was there, I could not let the kids in, even to keep them together and not disrupt other classes nearby. It put me in a tough spot between my duty to keep the students safe and the school's policy. I got to my assigned classroom, and of course, no sub had been scheduled for it. I talked to the students, who were mostly seniors, and I said, "Look, the office messed up and we don't have a teacher right now. If you all work with me and keep it down to not bother the other classes, I'm gonna see who they can send to basically babysit us." The kids were great about it, just went in and got out homework to work on quietly. I called the office like I was supposed to be in this situation, and they said that they would send someone right away. I also popped into the rooms on either side of us to give the teachers there a heads up so they would not think that we were just goofing off and causing problems. 10 minutes went by, still no sub. I called the office again and got the same "someone's coming" line. We kept waiting. After a bit, one of the nearby teachers poked her head out, saw us still camped in the hall, and gave me a judgy "heh look before going back in her room and pointedly shutting the door. We were now 25 minutes into the 40-minute class period, and that is when the principal showed up on his rounds and found me with the students working in the hallway. He started scolding them, demanding to know why they were not in class. I quickly jumped in. "Hi sir, you must be our sub today. I called the office twice, but no one's come up yet." The principal was almost retired and clearly didn't want to be dealing with this. However, he begrudgingly led us into the room and babysat the class until the bell rang for lunch. As the kids left, the principal told me to come to his office to talk. He called in my supervisor too, and they both laid into me for how I handled the situation, even though I had just followed policy. I was confused and asked them to clarify, pulling up the school guidelines to show that I had not done anything wrong. The principal could not actually say that I had messed up. He was just mad that the screw up with scheduling a sub meant that he had to cover the class himself. To wrap it all up, I said, "Please send me an email detailing exactly what you want me to do in the future if this happens again, step by step, so there's no confusion here." They agreed, and later that day I got an email laying out the procedure, which was exactly what I had already done. I printed it, laminated it, saved the email, and started carrying it with me at work just in case. Word got around to the other paraprofessionals about what happened. I suggested they also get the policy in writing to cover themselves. Over the next few weeks, with the staffing shortage still going on, the same thing happened to several of my coworkers too. In each case, they followed the principal's emailed steps to a T. The key part was that after 20 minutes with no sub, we had to email the principal about it and then also call him to come deal with it himself. Within 3 days, he got called to cover 9 different classes. That Friday, all of us paraprofessionals got called into a meeting on our lunch break. I saw it coming and showed up ready with the laminated email from the principal, our contracts, labor law documents, all the mandatory training and child protection policies we had to follow, just the works. The bosses laid into us over how many times we had called the principal that week. We all just sat and took it, and then they asked if we had anything to say for ourselves. I stood up, called our union rep on speakerphone so it would be recorded, and went through everything. The principal's emails, our contracts, the legal requirements and trainings we had to follow. I pointed out that we were now 38 minutes into our 40-minute lunch break, which meant they legally owed us overtime pay. The union rep had the principal make a statement and we ended the call. The administrators were shocked. They realized that we had them dead to rights on not following child protection policies, not scheduling subs, mistreating us for following their own rules, and now owing us overtime. Since the meeting made us miss lunch, they had to give us the rest of the day off paid, including the overtime. We also decided to organize a strike for next Wednesday, a day we knew it would not impact student testing, to really make a point about how essential we actually are. That day, tons of classes had no proctors since we were not there, really highlighting the incompetence at the top. By the next term, a bunch of the administrators and managers had been reassigned to try to clean up the mess. It just goes to show, if you want something done right with your kids' education, do it yourself. This kind of mismanagement in schools is way more common than people actually realize. And yeah, ripe stars, if you have enjoyed the story so far, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post some star emojis in the comments to help me with beating the damn YouTube algorithm. And now let's move on to the title story. A couple of years ago, I met my now wife while on a trip in Egypt. We hit it off straight away, and after a few trips over and back, I asked her to marry me. We bought a small house together near where we met, about an hour away from her childhood home, and began our life together. Her parents never liked me. At the start, they liked to pretend that I couldn't speak Arabic so they could trash talk me. My wife eventually caught them and put a stop to it, but the feud continued. They hated me for stealing her and taking her away from her home, even though she is 25 and we don't even live that far. "Susie, this marriage is not good for you," I heard her mother say to her one day. We were visiting her for the weekend. "Mom, I love him though, he loves me, what's your big deal?" she replied. They've had this conversation many times. "I know what's best for you, dear. I can find you an amazing man if you'll let me." But that's just it. I found that man already. "You two should divorce. I can help with the paperwork and then you can move back home," her father chimed in. Oh my gosh, you guys really don't want me to be happy. We visited less and less. Each time we'd go home in terrible moods because of her parents. This ended up being another reason that they hated me, claiming I was stopping the visits even when she herself explained it was because of their toxic behavior towards our marriage. I also have a pretty decent job, and since my wife's parents are coming up to retirement now, we send over money to help them out. An act that goes completely unthanked. They even yell and shout when the money is late, too expecting of it. Anyway, they know I have a good job and roughly how much I make. If they are not trying to cause us to divorce, they are asking for money. I usually say no, other than the odd bits and pieces, but just a few months ago, they stopped asking altogether. I figured they had just given up, but that was until I started noticing strange charges in my bank statements. There was occasional amounts being spent on food, clothing chains, etc. I first thought it might be my wife. I have no problem with her using my card, but she is always so shy when it comes to money. She wouldn't just spend nearly the equivalent of $500 and not tell me about it. However, I let it slide. Stupid decision. Why? Well, because next thing I know, $1,200 was being taken out of my account each month and being sent into a bank for a loan. I spoke to my wife about this, who had no idea what the charges were, or the earlier ones. I called my lawyer, who did some digging and found that several documents had been signed under my name to take a mortgage loan out. I was panicking, but my lawyer assured me that there was a good chance this could be resolved, as the signatures seemed a little fishy and some of the validation boxes had not been filled. He suspected whoever did this had bribed the officials to skip some of the crucial steps. However, as the loan and mortgage was in my name, I could see what it was spent on. Of course it was a house, my lawyer had said this, but more specifically the address, so over we went. And by the way, ripe stars, one thing I just remembered I forgot to mention, this story did not take place in the United States. Anyway, were we surprised when, upon opening the door, my wife's parents answered? Not really, but it was still a bit of a shock. "Ah, hello, Susie." My mother-in-law brought her daughter in for a hug, who remained rigid. "Care to explain?" I asked, glaring at the woman. "What?" she replied. "Well, are you not gonna tell us why we are standing in a new house, a house that you certainly cannot afford?" My wife spoke up. "How did you even get this address?" my mother-in-law asked, a confused look on her face. "Well, if this house is legally in my name, I'm gonna end up knowing the address, aren't I?" I was beginning to get impatient with all of this backpedaling. "What are you getting at?" she asked. "Well, obviously, you stole my identity to take a loan out for this house," I all but screamed down her ear. "Wow, don't be so disrespectful, young man. I had every right to do that." "What? In what world would you have the right to commit a crime like that?" "No crime was committed. I'm the mother of your wife. It's my right to have access to your assets." "You cannot seriously believe that." "Well, I do. You can be off now." "No. We are going to be thoroughly investigating how you did this and reversing this loan." "Well then, how will I be able to afford the house? That simply is not fair." "What? You're joking, right? Not fair? Oh my word, you're insane! How dare you!" My mother-in-law screamed as she slapped me across the face, causing me to stumble backwards. "We will kick you out of the family if you try to take away our new home." Kick me out of the family? How on earth would you do that? And by the way, there's no way you're stopping us doing this. You cannot just steal from us. "Jerry," mother-in-law screamed, calling for her husband. Call the cops! Oh wow, I looked over at my wife and silently, we stepped back and waited for the cops to show up. The moment they were here, my mother-in-law started badgering them with lies, claiming I'd stormed over and started hitting her and that I abused my wife. I was just dumbfounded at all of this. It took a long while, but after my mother-in-law was unable to show any marks and my wife was completely unscratched, they left, giving a warning to my mother-in-law instead. We then left, heading straight to my lawyer's office to tell him what went down. He did some more digging, making lots of calls, and found that over 20 documents had been forged in this process of getting the loan, as well as one to receive an additional credit card, hence the other charges to my card. And as my lawyer predicted, there were lots of gaps in the verification process. He also discovered the extent to my debt, which was around $200,000 to be exact. I nearly fainted at the amount. Minutes later we had compiled a court case and it would be served to my wife's parents the next day. I could see my wife was in pain, knowing what would be the consequence of this for her parents, but she agreed that we go ahead with it and get some justice. After all, she's not overly fond of them herself. "We had every right to do this!" my mother-in-law screamed in court. The judge, who was looking very amused, simply shook her head and looked back over all of the evidence my lawyer had provided. It was an easy case. "You did not, and you don't have the right to steal somebody's identity, miss. Now, if you will please be quiet. For the identity theft of your son-in-law, you will be receiving the maximum of 10 years in prison, your counterpart and husband will be receiving 7. For the bribery of government officials, you will each add another 4 years onto your sentence." The judge banged her gavel onto the stone. "You cannot do that, we had the right!" My mother-in-law began screaming once more as she was cuffed and removed from the courtroom, along with my father-in-law. My wife went through all the motions alongside me, even though I saw how much it saddened her to know her parents had done something so foul. She decided to cut ties completely, knowing it would be for the better in the end. However, I can already see how much weight has been lifted off her shoulders now that her parents are not constantly mithering her anymore. And the next one is titled Hotel Revenge. Finally, I have something to contribute to this subreddit. So next week will be a major eclipse in the US. I booked a hotel almost a year ago with a free stay perk night in a good hotel in the path of totality. I don't think the booking algorithms had accounted for the eclipse at the time. Fast forward to today, where you cannot find a room nearby for less than a king's ransom and everything is booked to the max. As it turns out, my plans have changed and I went to cancel the room, but their cancellation policy is that I'm too late to cancel 1 week out without being charged a small fee. So I called the hotel directly to explain that if they won't charge me the cancellation fee, I'm happy to cancel my reservation and they can certainly make 5 times the normal rate for this once-in-a-lifetime event on the room. Well, it turns out their policy is their policy and they cannot waive the cancellation charge. Fine by me. I will keep the free night reservation and won't cancel after all, but boy, that will be a wasted opportunity for them. I like to think that because of my pettiness in not cancelling after all, at least the hotel staff won't have one more room to service and greedy corporate is not gonna be able to fleece someone with my empty room over the eclipse. Update: I've read from several of you that I should reschedule and then cancel. The truth is, I probably could do that, but truthfully, all I'm out of is a free night perk and at this point I wanna be petty. I fully intend to check in digitally and get a room assignment. I will not let them call me a no-show. To be honest, I'm across town anyway, so I might show up to use the facilities and eat the free breakfast too. And the next one is a landlord revenge story. And by the way guys, if you have any small revenge stories to share of your own, I would love to hear about them down there in the comments. Thank you so much. Long story short, my landlord was a childish jerk to all of us. He had us sharing about with 4 other people and charged us double while his spoiled son and girlfriend lived rent-free. A few months ago, I had a lawyer contact me and ask if I remembered renting there and if I would testify against him. Well, it turns out he was not the true owner of the property. His brother bankrolled all of the properties he told us he owned, and in turn the landlord was supposed to remodel on time and stay on budget to get the houses sold. Instead, he lived on and wasted the money his brother gave him and pocketed all of the rent without his brother's knowledge. His face went white when he saw me. Also, I tripped his lawyer up, who asked me 2 weak questions and then said he didn't have any questions for me. As I left the courtroom, I saw him from the corner of my eye sneer as I walked past, and he very loudly called out to me a sing-song voice, "By Sarah," right in front of the jury. Today I learned he lost the entire case. Petty revenge activated. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. I, 32 female, work at a barricade company. Easiest way to describe it, I'm the one that closes down the traffic lanes and makes you late to stuff. Anyway, this happened 2 days ago and I hope my revenge was petty enough, but here you are. So I had a lane closure that I needed to take off the road. I'm about halfway down when I get a city bus stop with 2 guys and a girl. They asked me if I could give them a ride so they don't have to take the bus. I said, sorry guys, I can't, I'm working. And continued to take the lane closure down. The girl stood up and told me, I effing hate rude ugly Karens. I reply, congratulations, and keep doing my job. They keep yelling insults, I ignore them. When I was about 300 feet away, the yelling stops and I see the guys had gotten up and started throwing the barricades in the street into the lane that is now open for traffic to drive in. I run over and take them out of the road and explain to them if they did it again, I would call the cops. Then the girl chimed in and said, go ahead, douchebag. It's not our fault, you're so stupid you're forgetting to take them all down. I walk away, they do it again. I called the cops and they said that they would be there ASAP. In my experience, that means about an hour. So I walk over and tell them I called the cops and stand there so they cannot move them again. After about 5 minutes standing there, the boys told the girl that they were going to get a drink from the Circle K the bus stop was in front of. They left and she would not look at anything but her phone. Now I'm annoyed, I still have more work to do and this lane closure is still up and it's approaching rush hour. So I decided, F these kids. I pulled out my pepper spray and I sprayed the handles of the barricades that they kept throwing in the street and walked about 50 feet away and waiting. The boys came out of the store, put their bags down and grabbed a barricade in each and threw them in the street. However, the handles were wet so they only went on the shoulder, so I didn't go to move them immediately. I saw they wiped their hands off on their pants, but because of the bus stop I couldn't see everything. About a minute later one of the boys got up and ran into the Circle K with his hand over his eye and ran in there a second later too. Though nothing seemed to be bothering him. About 10 minutes later when they came out of the store, the cops were just showing up and they both took off sprinting down the street and totally bailed on the girl. I talked to the cops and told them the boys ran off and the girl never touched the barricade, so they were good to go. The girl was crying because her boyfriend left her there. And the next one is a malicious compliance story. It starts like this. My mother was a legal secretary and worked for one of the biggest law firms in my country for over 15 years. At the point of the story, she was about 2 years from retirement. She had noticed a deterioration in her eyesight and was struggling to work on the computer, read, or do most of her day-to-day work. The firm sent her to an affiliated doctor who said she was absolutely fine and can continue working. But as she was struggling, she decided to pay privately for a specialist who immediately told her that she was no longer fit to drive safely, let alone accurately read or use a computer, as she had multiple degenerative eye conditions. The specialist told her to minimize time on a computer to the absolute minimum, as it was triggering migraines and other problems. She brought this report to the firm and requested either a change in her job requirements or to go on leave until she was again fit to work. But of course, the firm had their own report. They said she was exaggerating and could absolutely keep working. However, they very kindly told her that she only had to work on the computer 4 days per week from now on. 1 day a week she could just do filing. How generous, so she kept doing her job. But wouldn't you know it, when she was binding files for court, they were just a mess. Filing? Wow, cannot find anything. I know that she disliked several of the lawyers. My mother grew up poor and had to leave school young to work, so being uneducated, she was not always treated with much respect and she was happy enough to deal with their anger. But she was friendly with most, including one particular lawyer who may or may not have mentioned some tips to my mother on how to deal with the problem and what she was entitled to after working there for so many years. So when the higher-ups inevitably called my mother in about the terrible work, she presented quite a compelling case on her rights, safety in the workplace, disability leave, etc. Long story short, she got fully paid medical leave until she retired, back paid for any time she took off for doctor and hospital visits. And the next one is a story about a useless, leeching brother. My brother, 24 male, has been out of work for a while and has been looking to make any extra cash. So I, 27 male, decided to start paying him to walk my dog in the mornings and evening. Not much, but just so he has something. I didn't need him to because I was already doing that myself, but still been busy with work, so at least him doing it meant I wouldn't have to get up super early to walk my dog Bella or take her out really late once I'm done for the day. I did not notice this until a couple of weeks after he started walking Bella, but she has her own pee pad in my apartment where she does her business. Sometimes she will poop during our walks and I clean up after her. When my brother started walking her, I gave him the bags to use in case she went. However, a few days went by and I noticed Bella has not used her pee pad to go number 2 at all. I asked my brother if she's going during their walks and he told me she wasn't. I noticed it too when they would get back and he hasn't used the bags. I asked him a few times if he's sure and he said yeah. So that scared me because obviously there was a problem if she has not pooped in days. I took her to the vet and they did a physical blood work to check if she was dehydrated or anything else. However, literally nothing was wrong. So then the vet suggested we do an abdominal ultrasound to see if they could figure out what was going on. That crap wasn't cheap at all. So still haven't gotten the results yet, and earlier I'm at home, my brother stops by to take her out. Notices how I'm acting, so he asks what is wrong. I told him everything. That I'm freaked out over what's wrong with Bella because they've done these tests and they don't know what's up. Finally, he tells me he's been lying about the whole thing. Bella does go, but he just didn't want to pick up the poop. He did not tell me because he knew I would get mad since they only walk around this block. Which means he's been letting her go on the neighbors' yards and not picking it up. Man, I literally lost it, like actually yelled at him for making me worry about my dog and that I spent so much money for nothing. I essentially fired him and didn't say nothing about him paying me back because knowing him, I knew he won't. My brother begged me to give him a chance and he didn't know it was gonna be a big deal. He texted me multiple times that he is sorry and he really needs this help. Since he is staying at my parents', of course he told them, so now they are on his side too. To be a good brother and give him a chance for making a stupid mistake. My brother is mad that I won't help him. I'm still mad about the whole thing, so I don't know if I'm being too harsh because of my emotions or if I'm in the right here. So yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Do you think that OP is the a-hole or not? I'm very curious about what you have to say. A user in the comments said, tell him he can have another chance and once he has done enough walks that on what you paid him before, he has paid the vet bill back, he can get paid again. I have the suspicion that he won't agree to this, it will be a lot of unpaid work for him. Comment number 2, not the a-hole at all. Maybe if your parents are feeling so supportive of his laziness, then they can pay you back for the vet bills. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again tomorrow.